you're going to stay here in this body, we're going to praise the Lord. You know, so that's how I encourage.
Say that a little louder. Say it again. The people in the back.
Well, the people in the back, you have to speak to that illness. Speak to that illness.
Hello and welcome to another edition of Overcoming Illness. I'm Paula Denoncourt, your host, founder, and CEO of Enrich Your Health. I am a holistic health coach. I decided to do this show because of people that have different illnesses and their stories that need to be heard. And people need help coping with these illnesses. It can be illnesses like we're going to discuss tonight. Lyme disease, could be cancer, congestive heart failure, you name it. We've had all kinds of guests. If you've not seen any of the shows, I encourage you to go back and watch them on Elevation TV Network. Go over to their YouTube channel. It's Elevation TV Network, and give them some love on there. Give them a like, subscribe to their channel, and then subscribe to my channel while you're over on YouTube. So you can do that by going to Enrich Your Health, ENRICH, and then URHEALTH. That's my YouTube channel, as well as Elevation TV Network, who gives us this platform. So I help my clients stop living a life of pain and suffering with simple diet tips, recipes. I have simple recipes on my website, and I can customize them. So I am looking for people to partner with practitioners, doctors, yoga people, alternative practitioners, anyone who has clients or patients who, when you hear them say, I don't know what to eat, I'm allergic to everything, that was me. I suffered from multiple food allergies, so I can help with that. I can give simple recipes and changes where they're not overwhelmed with so many different options. There's a million things on the internet, I get it, but I like to make it simple. And so you have recipes for yourself that are dairy-free, gluten-free, sugar-free, so that it brings down inflammation in the body and gives you less pain in your body, and can help with those food allergies and sensitivities, less bloating even. I do want to also thank my sponsor this month, Paula Resendez of Traina Supplements. If you need some help digesting your food, getting some good quality vitamins in, good quality B vitamins, we've been talking about them every single show. Go back and watch some of the shows. And her information is up on the screen, so you can get that there. Without further ado, I am really super excited to have my guest tonight, Larry Dapsis. He is an entomologist from Cape Cod Cooperative Extension. He's been an entomologist since the age of 5. Can you even imagine? Bachelor's of Science degree in Environmental Science and Biology at Fitchburg State University, and that's in Massachusetts, and MS Entomology at the University of Massachusetts, Amherst. 43 years of professional pest management experience, including vegetables, cranberries, and household insects. Joined Cape Cod Cooperative Extension in 2011 as Deer Tick Project Coordinator and entomologist, and is a member of the Barnstable County Task Force on Lyme disease and other tick-borne diseases. And for those of you watching worldwide, Barnstable County is in Cape Cod, Massachusetts. So his additional responsibilities include invasive species monitoring, master gardener support, insect identification, and as a general resource for the county, educational areas include prevention of tick-borne diseases, insect evolution, pollination, ecology, pest management, general entomology, forensic entomology, and edible insects. Okay, Larry, that bio is really testing my abilities with my grammar. But welcome to Overcoming Illness. So, Larry, tell us a little bit.
It'll make you a star. It'll make you a star on Scrabble. All those words make you a Scrabble star. You know, you and get those into your lexicon. You could close out a game in 3 moves.
right? So, Larry, tell us a little bit about your background, where you
So,
grew
Paula,
up.
thanks for the invitation.
Yeah.
Sure. I'm a Massachusetts native. I grew up in the central part of the state, and I was born in a city, and I stayed there most of my early years, and then when I became 18 and decided on college, and I was thinking of different. I knew at age 5 that I was going to be a scientist. That flat out. I just didn't know what kind of scientist. I mean, I had an interest in insects, but the natural sciences overall, but also you know. I wandered into geology, and I wanted to, think about NASA at the time because Gemini and the Apollo programs were big when I was a kid. So I knew I was going to be in the sciences, but when I decided to go someplace that I could afford as a young poor kid, Pittsburgh State came to light, and I entered their biology and environmental sciences program, and I took a strong interest in surface water ecology. In fact, I had a big internship with the Nashua River Watershed Association, where we were looking at indicator organisms as and different species of insects and other invertebrates as indicators of water quality. So that was a really interesting one. But then I decided when I was finishing up that I did want to go to graduate school, and then you have to kind of pick a specialty there. And it looked like at the time going into entomology for me made a lot of sense. And so I wound up going to Mass Amherst and started out in vegetable crop entomology in the arena of interest management. So, um, looking at basically insect life cycles as they pertain to crop production and looking for weak links in life cycles and trying to figure out, what the rational approaches should be for managing all these serious things that can impact, our ability to supply food. And so I did that for about 3.5 years, and then entered the workforce. And I entered the workforce at a bad time. There was a big recession, and so the opportunities weren't many. But I wound up going into consumer product development. So products that people could buy to control insects in their households, like cockroaches and flies and fleas and whatnot. So I did that for a few years with a couple different companies, including Black Flags. So for you baby boomers out there in the United States, you may remember that brand of products. And I am the father of the new and improved Roach Motel. Okay, but then it became time to, in my mind, get a real entomology job, and that's when I joined Ocean Spray Cranberries, where I started out as the bug guy for North America, covering New Jersey, Massachusetts, Wisconsin, Washington, Oregon, and British Columbia, and a little bit in Quebec. And so I was at Ocean Spray for 24 years, but
Wow.
after 24 years, the only thing I didn't do was make juice. And so then my career path made a hard left turn from agriculture into public health. And that's when I joined Cape Cod Cooperative Extension as the entomologist. So my responsibilities are for the general public. I cover ants to yellow jackets. And that's kind of a broad responsibility, but I have not been stumped yet on any bug problem. Big focus and it really important to southeastern Massachusetts and many areas of the United States and other countries is the prevention of tick-borne diseases like Lyme. And in Massachusetts, we are endemic not only for Lyme, but with these deer ticks, 4 other significant diseases that these ticks can transmit. And that's just one of the ticks that people have to deal with here. But it goes well outside the borders of Cape Cod. This is Lyme is something that's endemic in 100 different countries around the world. So it's not only through North America to varying degrees, um, but also to up and coming big problem in Europe and Western Asia, and certain parts of Asia, Southeast Asia.
Oh, didn't know that.
Yeah. So Lyme is actually out there in a bigger bigger coverage. It's just that the medical community, hasn't really kept pace with the people that get sick. I mean, because like a whole bunch of other diseases, as you know, Paula. So Lyme is occurring in places where it's just not recognized, and that's true here. Getting a correct diagnosis of Lyme disease is kind of a tricky thing. There's just not a
Right.
good mousetrap for that, and that's why prevention is the key. That's the foundation of the program I manage.
Hmm. So I love your tie.
Thank you. Am I overdressed?
Not at all.
That was a
You
that
just
was
for
a
the
gift
occasion.
from one of my workshop fans.
Hmm. Well, that was a cute little gift. So back up a little bit. Growing up, did anybody influence you in studying bugs?
Actually, the big influence for studying insects came from a couple different places.
Hmm.
One is, as a kid, I used to just collect things that were cool, that looked interesting. Because back when I was a kid, we didn't have computers, we didn't have the internet, we did not have cable television. So I spent a lot of my time outdoors. So I was hanging around the woods and meadows and swamp, and I would observe lots of nature. I was a naturalist at a young age, and
Mm.
I would basically collect stuff and bring it home. Interesting looking leaves and rocks, and occasionally I'd collect bugs in jars and take them home and look at them for a while and let them go. But one summer I was seeing some things appear on bushes that at the time they looked kind of like styrofoam, even though styrofoam was just invented when I was, a 6-year-old kid. But they look cool, so I would break them off the bushes, bring them home, toss them on my bureau, and I was in the first grade, and one day I was coming home from school, and my mom was waiting on the front porch, and then I heard, "Lawrence Joseph Dapsis, get your butt in this house right
Oh
now."
no.
And when you hear all three of your proper names in one sentence, Paula, you know what that means. That
Oh
means
yeah.
it's time for a staff meeting. And my mom escorted me to my room and collected were praying mantis egg cases and at the same time. And so around my room, on my bureau, the walls, the ceiling, were hundreds of little baby praying mantises that were walking
Oh,
around looking for their first meal, like a fruit fly or something. And I
oh.
thought it was the coolest thing I had ever seen. Yeah, hundreds of praying mantises. And I was, the luckiest kid in the world until my mom took out the vacuum cleaner and took care of what she perceived to be a problem in the household.
Ah.
So that was the end of my housemates for a while. But I think that did have a lasting impression upon me. When I was finishing up my biology degree at Fitchburg State, I had taken entomology along with a lot of other zoology courses and whatnot, and I still wasn't exactly sure what I was going to do with it.
Mm.
But I had a really good advisor, and he got his PhD at Cornell in plant physiology. And we were chatting about graduate school, and he told me that when he was at Cornell, there was a department of entomology. Then one of their specialties, because he used to run into this group of scientists all the time, and he said, "There's a thing called integrated pest management, Larry, IPM." And he said, if you go into a degree in entomology and integrated pest management, not only might you have a job in a very specific field, but you can make some money, some good job opportunities. And when I looked into entomology and pest management, I saw a big world in front of me. And and so I started out in agriculture thinking, well, everybody has to eat. And I grew up, as a lot of people did, immigrant families. A lot of my family's background, we farmed. We farmed up. Um, I'm really the first generation in my family that didn't grow up on a farm or farming, but I've got a lot of farming behind me, and so I had a great appreciation for agriculture at an early age, just because of that's where our family came from, and so starting vegetable crops was wonderful, and then when I went into the job market and was testing the waters, and then wound up in cranberries for 24 years. I mean, which was unique because that's farming in a wetland ecosystem, which is kind of a tricky thing with trying to grow and maintain things like water quality and uh, we evolved to a point we are great at being able to manage crop in a environmentally compatible way. But like I said, it was time to eventually move on, and that's when I wound up with cooperative extension. And now, um, the big thing when I joined extension was when my opened. I mean, I'd heard of Lyme disease when I was in primary, didn't renew on my course, but I didn't understand probably to the full extent. And when I started doing workshops and talking to people, a lot of people here for chickens, and then I started hearing the horror horror stories about tick-borne diseases and being sick for a year, couple years, 5 years, 10 years, sick
Mhm.
for 20 years, and they're so frustrated because they don't know what's going on and they don't know how to get help. And I saw that what I can do is let's prevent that tick bite in the first place, so nobody has to go through this. Because
Right.
once you get into that arena, you don't know the outcome, and that should be kind of scary. And there are things
Right.
from the standpoint of prevention. So our program is an aggressive outreach. I'm just many people as I can through various media, so live in-person workshops, work with the media closely. You are
Mhm.
a phenomenal opportunity for me to get our message points out. So
Yeah.
it's a constant dialogue that I now have with many people.
Yeah, I think it's amazing what you're doing, Larry. I remember when I met you, I went to a group meeting with Central Mass Lyme Foundation, which is what I started to go to all their group meetings. And if you've never seen my program before, I'm a Lyme disease advocate. I've gone to many, many meetings for them in Massachusetts. I'm in North Carolina now. But I just commend you for all the workshops you're doing in teaching people how to prevent Lyme disease. You and I talked the other day. I see people rolling around on the grass over here and stuff, and I think to myself, do they have anything on to prevent a tick bite? Probably not. They probably don't even think about it. I mean, they're all dressed up. It's a restaurant right aside of it, and they're all dressed up to the nines going to this
Mhm.
expensive restaurant. I'm on a lake. It's beautiful here. And I'm like, these kids, they're young, they're just rolling in the grass. I'm sure they're not thinking of putting on some DEET or something, rolling in the grass. I
Sure.
guarantee you that. So we need to educate. So with that, Larry, let's talk about some of the things people don't think about, even with, with ticks and prevention. So considering the mild winters that we've had, what is the likelihood of an increased tick population this year? And what are experts predicting? You were telling me it's a little bit different for the South as it is for like New England or Massachusetts.
Sure. In the Northeast, in the upper central Midwest, I mean, overall, we had a mild winter across the board. And I normally get calls in the spring from the media like, Larry, what's the tick for? When tick season start? I say, I say, well, it started. It never ends
Right.
actually.
Right.
So it's 365 days a year. In terms of whether this is the year of the tick apocalypse, I take a kind of let's look at this from a scientific standpoint. Mild weather does not create a tick population. And the idea that even if you get a cold winter, it'll kill off a number. Ticks actually, the cold weather, even really cold weather, like when I was traveling to Wisconsin as a cranberry scientist. I mean, in Wisconsin, 25 below zero, happens all the time out there. And in Wisconsin, ticks are quite healthy, and Wisconsin's quite endemic for Lyme disease. So even in our worst winters here in the Northeast, Paula, the ticks are not impacted. They actually synthesize a chemical called glycerol. Well, these guys make antifreeze. Okay, so not only they make antifreeze, they're tucked under the snow, so they're insulated, so they're fine. So what I tell people in the media is that in order for us to have the tick apocalypse, that would have been due to events that would have happened 2 years ago. If we had a huge tick population rolling over us, it would have been because that we had a phenomenally large acorn crop 2 years ago, which would have made the mouse and chipmunk populations and other rodents spike last year, and that would have led to an increase in tick populations this year. But acorn crops go up and down, and so what we see in our surveillance is tick populations vary year on year, but they don't oscillate like here and like down
Mm.
there. It's more of a matter of prevailing environmental conditions that allow them to be active. So whenever you get temperatures above freezing, there's no snow cover. Yeah, ticks are active. If you get periods in the summer where it gets very dry and the humidity is low, you're going to have lower exposure risk because the ticks are down in the leaf litter trying to stay hydrated. They desiccate. Deer ticks desiccate quite quickly.
Hmm.
And then if you get, rain and ambient humidity going up, the ticks will be more active. So, but I tell people that tick season starts January 1st, goes to December 31st. And so when the environmental conditions are favorable, you have tick activity. And here in Massachusetts and in workshops, I show people the case data. And if you look at cases of Lyme disease by month, you see cases of Lyme disease in the Northeast, January, February, March,
Hmm.
April, all the way to December. But the bulk of the cases are during the summer months. So,
Right.
which is what we're coming into right now. So 85% of the cases occur during the summer, but it's all throughout the year. So
Yeah.
it's not going to be the apocalypse. It's mild winters. It just means the ticks were more active earlier. People were, taking advantage of the nice weather in the early spring, getting outside. So they're surprised that um, that they're out there in March and they're getting tick bites. So it's more
Right.
of a matter of people activity than anything else.
Right. So Larry, tell people how they can. I've talked about it on other shows, but some people might be watching that have never watched before. How can they prevent a tick from being on them, or what's tick prevention? Tell us, give
Sure,
us, yeah.
sure. We've constructed our program in a 3-phase plan, Paula.
Mm-hmm.
Protect yourself, protect your yard, and
Mm,
protect your pet. Okay, so we got all three of those things to consider. In terms of personal protection, you have to be mindful if you're going to be in a tick environment, and this is something that if you look at like say the CDC website, tick habitat, they all those sites will show you a trail going into the woods, like in a state park or a state forest, and you don't have to go to open space like a state park to get a tick bite. Surveillance information that was obtained in Connecticut showed that two-thirds of the people that were submitting ticks for identification and testing got them from their own backyards. So ticks and gardening are the perfect marriage. So you
mm,
don't have to go into a state park to get a tick bite. You can get, easily in your backyard.
right.
And so, if you know you're going to be in a tick environment, um, and it's not, the middle of your lawn, deer ticks don't, that habitat, direct sunlight, short grass, they don't survive there. But you get to the edge where there's, like partial shade, leaf litter, transition in bushes and shade trees. So you get lower temperatures, higher humidity. That's where you're going to find these deer ticks. So you just have to be mindful of that. So if you are going into a tick environment, it's certainly recommended, the long pants tucked into your socks. Yeah, it looks dorky, but it's effective. Keeps the ticks on the exterior of your garment. But people during the summer like to wear shorts and stuff like that, and so even if you're wearing shorts, um, wearing proper shoes and socks is important, and wearing light colors makes it easier to see the ticks. I tell people when you come in from a outdoor activity, first thing you do is to get ready to do a tick check is throw your clothes in the dryer for 20
Yeah.
minutes. That's all it takes to kill any ticks there. You don't have to throw them in a hot water wash and then put them in the dryer forever. Just 20 minutes
Right.
in the dryer, enough. And then that's an opportunity to, what you should be doing is a tick check. And as a lot of people experience, ticks can get in some funny places. So
Right.
the typical places are, on your hip, around your neck or behind your knee, but you got to think about between your toes, your pelvic area, under your
Mm,
arms. So they um, any tight places where clothing becomes restrictive is a place where you're going to find a tick, but you can
mm,
basically find them anywhere. And the stages of the tick, if you were going to create a search image, what should I be looking for? I tell people when you do a tick check, using your fingertips is probably the best way to do a tick check. Is you feel around and feel, where you come across a bump where you never had it
mhm.
before. So your fingertips are very good at tick checks. But in terms of size, the adult stage of the deer tick that's out from September till there's still some out about now. They're about the size, if you look at seeds on a bagel, sesame
Yeah.
seeds. So an adult stage deer tick is about the size of a sesame seed. But the nymph stage of the tick that started, especially with this mild weather up here, started coming out, 2 to 3 weeks ago, and they'll be with us until mid-August. And those things are the size of a pot, okay? So something really tiny with 8 legs, a bad attitude that can plant you on your butt for a very, very long time. So looking for something the size of a seed is a challenge. So that's why we see 85% of all tick-borne diseases in the Northeast occurring during the summer months when that nymph stage is active. Okay,
Mm,
so we got proper clothing, proper footwear, and then you think about repellents as a first line defense. And
yeah.
repellents, that's the best tool we have in the box. and people, are confused. It's like, people read and, they should be using a bug spray. Well, that's a little bit too general of a recommendation. Repellents that are for skin. So like products like Off, or products that contain DEET or alternatives to DEET like picaridin or oil of lemon eucalyptus. And those are for treating your exposed skin. And what that means is the tick won't bite you where the repellent is, but it just
Okay.
might keep walking along until it finds a place where there's no repellent. But those type of products are very good for exposed skin. What I found and really drive home to people is that there's a repellent to treat clothing. Okay, so shirts even, but pants and socks and footwear, and it contains the active ingredient permethrin. Okay,
Yeah.
and what I found is that, you see casual references to this in a lot of extension literature or media writings like, oh yeah, you can get, treat clothing with permethrin. It's kind of like, okay, have a nice day. But what does that mean? Well, when I started doing research with permethrin to see, okay, what does this bug spray really do? What I found, Paula, is that if a tick gets on a treated fabric surface for 60 seconds, one
Hmm.
minute, that tick is guaranteed to die. Okay. And as Martha says, that's a good thing.
Right.
And the tick might not die in 60 seconds, but it's impaired. You can see it, uncoordinated walking and stuff. But that tick, 5 minutes later, it might be dead. Might take 10 minutes, a little bit longer, but the outcome is absolutely guaranteed. And so that is the most effective tool in the box. And when I turn people onto this, Paula, and then they go outside into a tick infested environment, they will get back to me and say, Larry, this stuff is magic. And the biggest problem we had on Cape Cod was finding product. So I met with all the owners or managers of the major garden centers on Cape Cod, and now they're all stocking product.
Oh, wow.
And when I go in and do store checks and talk about, how are sales going, and in recent years, the product is flying off the shelf. So the
Mm,
word is getting out, and a lot of
good.
people are onto this, which is a really good thing. And then you have to address the elephant in the room, okay? Because Larry Dapsis, entomologist that we trust, is telling me to put my kids in
Yeah.
clothing treated with a synthetic chemical
Right.
pesticide. And is Larry a crazy guy? Well, I'm not. Um,
Right.
and the way I look at it is, well, a little bit crazy, but nobody dresses like this other than me. Um,
Right.
but if you look at the statistic, kids under the age of 10 have the highest incidence rate of Lyme disease in the state of Massachusetts. Now, I'm sure that's the same for every other area where Lyme exists. And then there's a second spike of incidence rate for people in their 60 and older, so younger people and older people. And so I tell people that these data show me a lot of things, that it shows me that everything parents have been doing up to this point in time, it's not working. Okay, so let's think about our game plan. And
Right.
in terms of permethrin, Paul, this is really a psychological barrier. It's a chemical as
Yeah.
opposed to a barrier because it's a toxic substance. And so to
Right.
put some perspective on it for people, um, I walk through the toxicity and the ins and outs, like what's the exposure risk of this chemical,
Hmm.
and so if you go through everything, the bottom line is that, and this is from EPA, their conclusion is that permethrin treated clothing poses no harm to infants, children, pregnant women,
Hmm.
and then they extending. And National Research Council that studied long-term exposure, like people wearing permethrin treated everything, 18 hours a day, every single day for 10 years. And when they rolled up that aggregate exposure, they saw no reason to expect an adverse effect. So Paula, when I look at what I think is really a low amount of risk for permethrin exposure, and I weigh that against the consequences of one of these tick-borne diseases, and
Oh
Lyme is
yeah.
just one of them. For me, that is easy math. So
Right.
parents should not hesitate to be using this to protect their kids. It's what we need to do.
Yeah, they don't see the big picture. They, even myself, I didn't know a few years back what Lyme disease even was, let alone what, chronic Lyme was or any of that. So they just don't
Sure, and it's
know.
hard to yeah, it's hard to even diagnose in a kid. How do you ask a kid if their joints are feeling arthritic? I mean,
Mm,
they've never they don't know what you're talking about.
right.
So that's and so kids are an important component of protection. And here on Cape Cod, we have a much older demographic. I mean, there's a lot of retired people here on Cape Cod, and so our population has a higher average age than compared to the rest of the state. So we have, not only Lyme that they're susceptible to, but babesiosis and anaplasmosis are also transmitted by deer ticks. Um, Most of those cases occur in people 60 and older. And here on Cape Cod, in our surveillance research, we see a certain degree of co-infection. About 10% of the
Right.
ticks are packing more than one bug, and you can get more than one of these diseases at the same time. So permethrin treated clothing and footwear year round. So to that end, we actually scripted and produced a 10-part video series on
Mhm.
everything you need to know about tick biology, diseases, and how to get ticks tested and repellents. So if you go to our website,
Okay.
capecod.gov/ticks, um, there'll be a playlist for all 10 videos. And one of our videos is on permethrin treated clothing and footwear. And hands down, it's packed with really solid information to a point
Oh,
where
good.
the Appalachian Mountain contacted me last year that they're using our permethrin video as in-house training tool because it's so good. So our information on our website, it's available to anyone, and
Hmm.
I'm an available resource. Call me. I'm
Oh,
open for
good. Yeah,
business.
I'll definitely check that out. So, Larry, we're just going to go to a brief commercial and we'll be right back, okay?
Will do.
All right, and we're back. So what you just saw was a commercial for Paula Resendez, our monthly supporter and sponsor from Trina and Supplements. That's a probiotic, and what that does is it digests the food that we can't digest. So it's a little hard to see in the video, but in that pudding, it's breaking down all the different like carbs and fats and proteins. So it's really helpful for people with if they have gut issues, and a lot of people with autoimmune issues, Lyme disease, have gut issues. So you want a probiotic. So let me know if that's something you need help with, and I will hook you up with Paula. So Larry, we were talking about, you started to talk about the co-infections, and one of the ones you mentioned was babesiosis, um, which some people are probably like, what did he just say? What is that called? So the CDC recently posted,
It's one,
yep,
it's one of those one of those Scrabble words.
Right? So the CDC recently posted about a significant rise in babesiosis. So tell the people a little bit about, help them understand what the heck is it all about co-infections. Like you've got Lyme disease, but there's also infections that come under the umbrella of Lyme disease, and babesiosis is one of them. So tell the people a little bit about that.
Sure. So deer ticks, there's we now know of 5 different pathogens they can transmit to people that make them sick. So we have Lyme, by far and away is the most prevalent, but Babesia, and after a while, Paula just kind of rolls off the tongue. But anaplasmosis, relapsing fever, and Powassan virus. Yeah, the CDC, there was a lot of media coverage lately that there's been a 25% increase in the amount of babesiosis out. Well, we don't know so much about that type in Cape Cod for a number of reasons, but it's not, babesiosis is not new to us. In fact, the first case of babesiosis in the United States was diagnosed in 1959 on Nantucket. So basically, Cape Cod. And so we've known about this organism, and it's a player here. I know people have had it sometimes with Lyme, and babesiosis. It can land you in the hospital in a heartbeat. This is like, it's really kind of like getting malaria, and so your plate counts will drop like a rock off a cliff, and it, unlike Lyme, it can be directly fatal. And we see Babesia infected ticks in about 10 or 12% of the tick population. So it's out there, and it's significant. So what the CDC was announcing was the fact that they're now just getting around to surveillance. And so when you go out and measure something, that you might find it. And that's what the CDC is discovering, is that it was there. It looks like an increase, but because if you start it, you're not measuring it, and now all of a sudden you look, it may have been out there at a low level, and now it's 25% more. It's just you're looking for it, and so the way the data are being collected in Massachusetts now is different. So we don't have insight into number of cases. It's our state Department of Health is recording number of visits to an emergency room due to a tick bite, and then discharge with what looks like maybe a tick-borne disease. So we've lost some visibility, but the argument is that the data that were being reported from doctors was flawed. It's way underreported in the CDC. They may cite there's 35,000 cases a year, but people in the know believe that it's more like 350,000 cases a year or more. So it's 10 times underreported. So
Wow.
that's why Massachusetts has taken a different tact on reportable infectious disease as far as tick-borne stuff goes. But when the data were being gathered, I was contacted by a person at Harvard School of Medicine, and they basically were looking at trends of Lyme disease, and they were baffled when they got to Barnstable County, Cape Cod, and then they realized or found out that we have a very aggressive education program. And Dr. David Scale contacted me. He said, Larry, whatever you're doing, keep doing it, because Barnstable County is the only county in the state where the incidence rate of Lyme was not increasing. So we're out there, but people are listening to us. We've got, core messages like treated clothing and footwear, and people are responding, and we can see it in the data.
And just going back to the treated clothing too, I would say, if anybody's out there listening, or you share this with somebody, type of people that would really, really need that are people that go hiking all the time. Your
Sure.
people that landscapers, construction people, people that are outdoors all the time, working outside. Um, that's what I would, besides kids, just, adults that are always outside and working, and, that putting that clothing on is going to beat trying to spray yourself with off or some other type of stuff all the time, so, or,
Yeah, or people tend to look at those all natural products, and all natural, it sounds good, and
Mhm.
you're kind of embracing something. It's all natural, it's effective and safe, and unfortunately, Paula, for this area, um, the all natural products that have like botanical oils and whatnot, they're totally ineffective as personal protection or yard sprays. And to a point you just made that was completely valid, like who's at risk? Well, I've spoken before the Cape Cod Landscape Association and different gardening groups, partners,
Yeah.
garden clubs, outdoor sporting group clubs. Yeah, there's all kinds of groups that we try and touch on.
Yeah. Yeah, because a lot of people don't, they just don't think about it. They do their jobs every day, especially like construction workers. They wouldn't think about it. But if they're going in and there's a lot of, land that has to be cleared or whatever, there could be ticks in there,
Yeah,
you
so
know.
I've spoken before department, DPW crews and our mosquito
Mm.
association, which is always out there, our AmeriCorps program. There's lots of people that day to day they have exposure risk, and so we try and help.
So let's talk about a little bit, couple things. One, talk about how a person can safely remove a tick. That first of all, and then talk about the testing of the tick versus the testing of a person once they got bitten. I know you can't talk too much about medical, but just a little general there. And full disclosure, this is not medical advice or any scientific, nutrition advice, not medical, not meant to heal, treat, or cure any illness on here. Just full disclosure there. But just a little information like, if they test the tick, it seems like they can test it for more than actual person faster.
Mhm. Yeah,
Yeah.
good point, Paul. So in the event you are bitten by a tick, there's uh, internet is wonderful and social media, but the problem is bad information
Right.
flies fast and far. So I'm always correcting misinformation that's out there.
Right.
So in terms of getting bitten by ticks, you see the old wives' recommendations, like the dish detergent or the Vaseline,
Yes.
so that the tick will eventually back itself out. The problem with that, Paula, is the longer that tick is attached, just means that it gives the tick more time to transmit one of these bugs into you. So there's a lag time. So for like Lyme disease, we have a 24-hour rule of thumb. If the
Mm.
tick is attached to you for less than 24 hours, the chances of getting Lyme are reduced. It's not zero, but it's reduced. And after 24 hours, risk of transmission goes up. And it's the same for, things like babesiosis and anaplasmosis. They're
Mm.
24-hour plus or minus. The exception being Powassan virus. The transmission time is 15 minutes. So
Oh.
in the event you want to get a tick out of you quickly, it's that's all you need, or that's what you should have. And you just grab that head, tick as close to your skin as you can get, just gently pull straight up. And in the event you see something left behind, a lot of people assume the head's embedded in there and it's a disaster. Well,
Mm.
ticks have a mouth part, okay? And if you pull it too hard, the beak breaks off. And that's the only
Mm.
part that's in you. And that doesn't transmit it doesn't contain the pathogens. It's like a soda straw. So
Okay.
if you see that left behind, it's with a little Neosporin can dissolve in 2 days. It's like a wood splinter. Um, But so you just grab that tick, pull it, and then what to do with it? Well, a lot of people, will flush that tick or dispose of it, some other way. They
Burn it.
might burn it or tape it to an index card, put it on their refrigerator as a little tick morgue. Yeah, people have their own way of, imparting justice. So like, you did this to me, I'm gonna take action. But
I think I
you can
burned
get that
one.
tick tested. Oh yeah, a lot of people take out, rage on a tick
Mhm.
that they removed. Um, but you can go and send it to a lab like at UMass Amherst.
Yeah.
There's a lab there, and they can test that tick for all the pathogens it was potentially exposing you to. So the lab we use is at UMass Amherst, and it's called tickreport.com. And
Yeah.
so a basic DNA panel test, which runs $50, will test for the bugs that cause not only Lyme but Babesia, Anaplasma, and relapsing fever, which are the dominant ones we have. Um, and so once they receive that tick, you're going to get that report in 3 business days or less. Very quick turnaround.
Right.
And you were talking about, people getting a blood test for Lyme disease. How accurate is that versus getting a tick tested?
Right.
Well, the human test for Lyme disease, you can get false positives, you can get
Right.
false negatives, you can take the test at the wrong time. So there's a lot of ins and outs to testing a person for Lyme disease. But for this tick test, um, this technique is 99.9% accurate. So if it says that tick is packing the bug that causes Lyme, it that's the deal. Uh,
Right.
so tick testing is extremely accurate. And so for a patient, it's actually good because you have solid data that
Right.
you can now, if you're not feeling good, now you can have a conversation with your primary or your kid's doctor. You can say, hey, my kid was bitten by a tick, say 3 weeks ago, and is not feeling good, or I'm not feeling good. And this tick that we pulled off had this, and maybe even this, because we've seen scared pathogens. And so for a doctor that's really kind of willing to, open their minds a little bit, and Cape Cod doctors, they're getting there. Um, Initially, it was like, tick test. What does that tell me? Well, it tells you what your patient potentially was exposed to, so that now you can look at your patient and hopefully start looking at what should be, part of the clinical profile, or for what is before you. And so I'm happy to report that some people have told me that there are some doctors, in response to getting, a call from a person that got a tick bite, they say, I'm not going to do anything until I see the tick report. And I think that's good news, is that
Yeah.
doctors are now taking these data and utilizing them, which is really, really good.
That is good news. That is good news. Yeah, I just really wanted to address that because who would think if you test a bug or a
Yeah,
tick that it would just be so much simpler than having to go through all these tests yourself. It just kind of saves that person from a lot of things that they don't need necessarily if that tick gets tested. So,
sure. And if the tick test comes back negative, as long as that was the only tick on you, if
right.
that comes back negative, that's a peace of mind, Paula. That's a peace of mind.
Absolutely. So let's talk quickly. We only have about 5 minutes, but just some quick myths. Like there's deer ticks and dog ticks. What can you tell us about that?
Sure. Dog ticks are very common here in the Northeast, and dog ticks, I consider them more of an annoyance than a real health threat here. They can transmit the bug that causes Rocky Mountain spotted fever,
Okay.
which in my 12 years here in Extension, we've had one case of Rocky Mountain spotted fever. Down where you are, Virginia, North Carolina, Rocky Mountain is much more common in southern states. So dog ticks down in your area, dog ticks are, they're more of an important part of the landscape as well as deer ticks. But up here, I tell people, okay, it's a dog tick, and only deer ticks can transmit that pathogen that causes Lyme. So one of the
That's a,
myths out there is that, I got Lyme disease from a mosquito or I got it from a flea, because research shows that that pathogen that causes Lyme has been found in mosquitoes, in fleas, in lice, and spiders. And just because you find something like pathogen like Lyme in a bug like a mosquito does not equate to it being a successful vector. So yeah, people have find this bacteria in the mosquito, but it can't transmit that pathogen. Okay, and there's all kinds of complex biochemical reasons why that occurs. So this disease that causes Lyme is specialized for this deer tick. So we have deer ticks and 5 different diseases up here. Dog ticks that we consider more of an annoyance. And the newest player we have up here, but very, very common down south, is the Lone Star tick. And
uh,
we started finding this on Cape Cod about a year after I came on board. So about we've had 11 years now,
mm,
and it's found a good home on Cape Cod. It likes it here, and so we're keeping an eye on it,
mm,
and people are getting bitten, and there are some diseases that can transmit, and one of them is called starry. It's a type of rash disease with flu-like symptoms. So I know we've had some people with Lone Star tick bites diagnosed with starry and successfully treated. But the game changer with a Lone Star tick is the bite of a Lone Star tick can trigger an allergy to red meat consumption, which can
yes.
be as mild as hives, but all the way to anaphylactic shock. And I know that there are cases of this red meat allergy that has occurred here on the Cape. And so it's a very complex food allergy. In fact, one of the places that's doing the best research, a focal point of it, is down at the University of North Carolina, Paula, right in your backyard.
I
Dr.
didn't know that.
Scott, Dr. Scott Cummins is doing a lot of work on this um, meat allergy, and it's not just beef, but it's pork and lamb, and even beef derived products like gelatin. But even now that allergic response has been extended to high fat dairy products like ice cream. And I don't know about you, Paula, but I imagine being able to eat ice cream for a long time if I was bitten by a Lone Star tick. So that tick is found a nice home here on Cape Cod and is on the increase. So we've got 3 different players here, but Lone Star uh, here and down through the southern states, very, very common.
So one other question that just came to mind when you were talking about dog ticks, I was thinking about horses. So what kind of ticks are attracted to horses?
Deer ticks quite common on horses. In fact,
Okay.
behind people, in terms of pets in Lyme, dogs are very susceptible to Lyme disease. And ironically, there is a vaccine for Lyme for your dogs, but not for people yet. Pfizer has one in the works, maybe years down the road.
Mm,
But you can get a vaccine for your poop, but it shows up in horses and goats. So you have to be mindful of your big pets as well as your smaller pets.
right. Well, we got about 1 minute left. So tell everybody once again where they can reach you, whether you have email or website, whatever, phone number, whatever easiest way for people to reach you. If
Yeah,
they even want,
the
yeah,
easiest way to look for information that we've posted is on our website, and again, it's capecod.gov, G-O-V, and /ticks. And that'll take you to our tick and insect page. And
okay,
again, we have the video series. It's 90 minutes of material in like 10 little buckets. So you
Mhm.
can make yourself some popcorn, pop a
Yeah,
cold one, and you get a lot of information. And as a bonus track, Paula, a documentary was made about me and our efforts here. Yeah, it's called
okay.
Tick Days. An independent filmmaker followed me around for about a year, and this documentary showed in a number of major film festivals. So
Wow.
I'm quite proud of that. So that's on our website as well. It's called Tick Days. Uh,
Mhm.
and for further questions, my contact information is on our website.
Okay. Well, this has been fascinating. I'm just going to sum up a couple of things because I think it's a lot of information for everybody. But I think you really helped us with some myths. Like a lot of people talk about other insects can carry Lyme. You mentioned it can carry it, but it can't transport it. So that's huge. That's really good to know. Talking about the chemicals in the clothing, a lot of people are concerned about that. You address that, like what's worse, being ill the rest of your life from a
Sure.
tick bite, and trying to pay for all this medicine and herbs and whatever it takes to get well, or to just wear this chemical that has a low exposure rate. So you gave us scientific backed evidence, which is huge. I mean, I can tell people till I'm blue in the face, but I didn't have that scientific evidence, so that's huge. And then just talking about the dog ticks versus the deer ticks. The deer ticks are attracted to the horses, which that's what's the deer ticks are transporting the Lyme. So I think we really addressed a lot of myths that people weren't aware of. And especially I see this all the time on Facebook, the like putting the dishwashing liquid, the Vaseline, different things on the tick. What I was told, and you can probably tell me this too, is it can aggravate the tick too to put that stuff on there. So it's going to bite harder. I don't know.
That's a myth as well. That's
Yeah.
a
Okay.
little anthropomorphic. Is that you read don't agitate the tick because it'll throw up. Well,
Yeah.
tick
So that's,
plumbing doesn't work like that. They're not going to. You can't make them mad and they throw up and get you. So it's take that off the table as well.
okay. But it's good for people to know. And one last tip that I've mentioned on another show too. I have a friend that goes hiking all the time. He uses a sticky roller to roll over all of himself before he even goes inside. So he gets a lot of the ticks on the sticky roller.
That's a
So
good
that's
idea. Yep.
yeah. So Larry, this has been great. Thank you so much for taking the time out to speak to us tonight. And I'm just so appreciative. I mean, I've learned a lot. So thank you so much. And once again, I want to thank my sponsor, my monthly supporter, Paula Resendez. If you guys need some good quality supplements, if you have an autoimmune illness, not just Lyme or, just not feeling so great, you want to check out her supplements. They're really good quality. I would recommend them. We have, really good stuff. So you can go back and watch some of the replays to see a little bit more about the supplements. And I'm looking forward to more monthly sponsors, daily sponsors, business spotlight people, and people that need my services because you might need recipes, and people for the show. If you've overcome an illness or going through an illness, I need you. People need your stories. So thank you again, Larry. Thank you, everyone. We will see you next Sunday. Good night, everybody.